Welcome, everybody, to Aeon Byte, our live show. My name is Miguel Connor, and I am your Pompatus of Gnosis. For those of you watching in the audio realms, that was a intro video from the Virtual Alexandria Academy. I recently added a course on the Bogomiles where we covered the Cathars, Paulicians, Manichaeans, and Marcionites. So very interesting, very encompassing. So check it out. And welcome everybody. I hope everybody's doing fine on this Thor day, on this Jupiter day, on this nice spring day, the day before. Yeah, May the 4th be with you. I guess that's the cliche today. And tomorrow is Cinco de Mayo. My God, we are living in a very syncretic society. So awesome. We've got an exciting show tonight with a lot of reveals, as many of you know and have been asking about. And we are going to go on an amazing odyssey. With us, as always, it's a pleasure to have my second favorite Oregon citizen after Bigfoot, and that is Bernie Taylor. Bernie, how are you doing?
It is an absolute pleasure to be on the show. I think this is number 5, right?
I'm not sure. Something like
We're
that.
up there. I mean, I'm encroaching on Vance territory, or fraction, at
Hey,
least a
plenty
fraction
of
of
room,
Vance territory.
plenty of room.
Yeah, you and Bigfoot can take over. We'd be good. And yes, we've got Vance the Moondog. Vance, how are you doing?
Yeah, just fine. I'm waiting for the big reveal, and we have a strong show tonight with Hercules, right?
Oh yeah. With Bernie, it's always a very good voyage, a very good odyssey, and yes, there's some housekeeping stuff to say later, but we will get into it. A lot of cool shows coming in May. We got shows on Nietzsche and the Left Hand Path. A couple of shows on the Archons. We will have a show on the origins of Christianity, and a few live shows on witchcraft, mind parasites, and a whole bunch of good stuff. It's going to be good. Jason Reza Giorgiani will be coming back, but this time for his first AMA, so you can finally ask him questions about things instead of sending me your email. So lots to go. A lot of gnosis we got. It's raining gnosis, hallelujah, or a hunka burning gnosis, as I like to say. Uh, Other than that, I don't think I have anything else. We want to maybe start in a couple of minutes, Bernie. So why don't we start? Tell us about this presentation. Lead us up to it.
Well, there are questions. There's questions that people have asked for a very long time. Um, was there obviously around the world there's common traditions, there's common architecture, there's mounds, there's pyramids, mini mountains, as I would say. And the question has always been, well, was it some transatlantic voyages 12,000 years ago or whatever, that the Hancockian Atlantis type of narrative? Was it deeper in time? And we've gone deeper in time in these other programs. We've gone back to 34,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we've shown that the themes 34,000 years ago were archetypally similar around the world. And there's people who think that in the last few thousand years that people have been traveling around the world and spreading the good news. I think that's sort of like the Mormon narrative, right? After Abraham or after Moses, lost tribes traveled around, ended up in the Americas. So there's stories out there, and these stories are amazing. They're important myths that we lead our lives by. The question really is, archaeologically, can we prove or disprove any of these myths? And that is what we're going to do today. We're going to do the big reveal. We're going to open up the window for every big idea that's been out there, from Plato, pre-Plato, to Ignatius Donnelly, to Graham Hancock. We are going to do the big reveal tonight. What is or what isn't true? Or perhaps is there truth in some of the words? And that's what we're going to do today. It's 6 o'clock here in Portland, Oregon, on a Thursday night. So it's a TGIF somewhere in Europe right now. So everybody out there, have a drink on your 8 o'clock and 8 a.m. on your Friday morning in London, Dusseldorf. But yeah, we're gonna do the big show tonight, and this is one share with your friends. And if you're doing this on audio, listen in, but go back and look at the videos. And if you've watched you're gonna watch the videos tonight, and you see something that's wild, hit the like button. Give Miguel some love because he deserves it for all his incredible work. And
Thank you.
without that as my opening, do we have any opening questions from the before that I'm not going to answer anyway before we start?
I don't think so. For the audience, as always, please super chat your questions so we can get to them. And yeah, appreciate the kind words.
I'm not going to answer beforehand, right? Because well, what's it about? What's it all about, Alfie? You got to watch the movie to know what the movie's about, right?
Yeah,
So
and that is true.
And that is true.
And that is
So-
true. And yeah, and for the audience, yeah, just in case you were asking, I do put different versions. There are those of you who prefer an audio version. You listen on podcasts. You don't trust the internet wisely, so you'd rather download the MP3. Many of you hate YouTube. I completely understand, but you can watch it on Rockfin or Odyssey and other places. So I try to spread it out, but if you need a visual and you've boycotted YouTube because of its evil shenanigans, there are other places you can watch the visual. So,
and here
but
we
Bernie,
go. So you're going
wouldn't
to
it
pick up.
just easier? Wouldn't it
You
easier
pick up the
just
screen now.
yeah. Wouldn't it easier just to blame it on aliens and we can be done with our interview real fast? Would that?
Yeah, tonight we are going to, maybe we throw ancient aliens under the bus, or maybe we actually prove that there were ancient aliens. So
There you
I mean,
go.
this is the reveal tonight. We're gonna get to the bottom of the whole thing.
All right, let's do
With the
this.
Phoenician sailors, the Egyptians, that they travel around the world and spread whatever, the news of ISIS, and
Mhm.
these are all big questions. So maybe we can pull up the first slide, Black Hills.
It's up. We see it. Black Hills.
Here we go. So the Black Hills, if you haven't been there, crosses over the states or intersects the states of Wyoming and South Dakota. And I've been there. When I came out Oregon some 30 years or so, drove across the country, went through the Black Hills and, of course, Mount Rushmore. And it was close. I think it was Clinton was president at the time, and it was a budget crunch or a budget stop or whatever it was, and all the national parks were open. So it was closed, but it was open because you didn't have to pay, so you just walked in. So we're looking at a picture of the Black Hills from Harney Peak, and that's the image that we see. And I'm going to flip to the next slide. And do we see another slide?
Lakota in the Black Hills.
Lakota
Yes.
in the Black Hills. Now, I'm going to use the word Lakota through this presentation. Lakota and Dakota are the same. And Lakota, the formal name that went on treaties was the Sioux. And there are many groups or tribes, nations within the Sioux. Okay. But I'm going to use the Lakota for this presentation, but we're talking the Lakota, Dakota, and Sioux. Lakota are what settlers called them when they arrived. Oh, European settlers, I should say. And here we are. We the Lakota were most famous, known for they're the great buffalo hunters of the plains. And this painting is from 1949 by the Lakota artist Oscar Howe. And we're going to show a few of his images as we go through to explain, give a good perspective on the life of the Lakota and how it fits into the big picture. Well, the Lakota, there were buffalo herders, therefore they traveled around to follow the buffalo, but they also intersected other places to find food and places to find spirituality. And what we're looking at here is the Black Hills, greater Black Hills of South Dakota. And if you look at the red arrow, you'll see where they looked to the sky and they saw the constellations with the red arrow, and they were the Triangulum and Aries. They had these triangular shapes that kind of look like teepees, and so that is outside of the Black Hills before they went in. And only small bands went into the Black Hills, whereas they did meet let's go to the winter teepee area, which is where we have the red arrow. And there's the green arrow that points to the constellation Gemini. And you can see that kind of rectangular shape of Gemini within the Castor and Pollux. And we're going to talk about some more of these constellations as we go through. But you just there's a sense of the night sky, and we can see, of course, the Milky Way in the darker area. But we're going to revisit these. So the teepees is where they were winter camps. They moved into the Black Hills. Okay. Well, when they moved into when they had the teepees, they actually had the sacred pipes at the place where they saw the teepees in the night sky, the winter camps. They had the sacred call it on Wakatanka pipe ceremony, and this is Oscar Howe's depiction of it. Now we don't have images, actually photographs. There were photographs at the time of the, early Lakota, at least in the late 1800s, but we don't have pictures of all these things or photographs because these were not things that the Lakota wanted their being photographed. He's calling on Wankataka the Great Mystery. So then the Lakota moved into the Black Hills, and we hear this black and white picture of the Black Hills. There's a lot of rivers. They were navigating by the rivers. This is not a map. That's the scale, and it's not north to south. This is how the Lakota saw it. And they traveled around, and we can up at the top I-10, we can see where the teepees and actually not the 10th, but the teepees are not on this one because they've already moved here into the Black Hills. Now, number 2, which I've read it out, is which is marked by the green arrow, is Mato Tipi Pahala, which is Bear Lodge Butte. And everybody in this audience knows about Bear Lodge Butte. And Lance, can you throw us out, give one idea what Bear Lodge Butte might be?
Actually, I don't have a clue.
You don't have a clue.
Well, the only thing. Oh no, not Devil's the tower.
It's what we
I
call
thought of that,
Devil's.
but I didn't. It didn't look like it on the picture, so you fooled me.
No, actually, so it's what we call Devil's Tower. And Lakota sacred narrative, Devil's Tower, or actually Bear Lodge, was created by the hero lifts up the ground to save a bunch of children. And as he's lifting up the ground to save them, a big bear scrapes down on the walls, and that's why you obviously bear marks on Bear Lodge Butte, right? I mean, there's no question about it. The bear marks. Okay. Well, we know this story, or this most of us know this because you've either driven by it or from the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where Richard Dreyfuss dreams about the mountain or Devil's Tower.
Right.
He's drawn to it, and he builds it in his living room. I think it was like on a coffee grinder or something. That was he dug up stuff in his backyard, and he's drawn to Devil's Tower. It's a fascinating movie if you haven't seen it, or you can, read about the Lakota version about the bear which is actually even a better story. Okay. So now we're into the Black Hills. We're deep into the Black Hills, and the green arrow, you can see, points to Devil's Tower. Well, in Lakota cosmology, the Devil's Tower was replicated in the night sky by the green arrow, which is we see the constellation Gemini. So as above, so below in that sense. And remember the teepees that we saw that were outside the Black Hills? We can see them pointed by the red arrows, and they are the Triangulum and Aries as marked by the red arrows. Okay. And there's a few more in there that kind of yellow points to the 7 sisters, which were seen as 7 young girls in the night sky, and as the peaks of Harney Peaks that represented grandfathers. Okay. And so as above, so below. And we point to the blue arrow is to the 3 stars in the belt stars in the constellation Orion, and that's part of a larger animal that we don't have in Greek mythology. But Lakota mythology, we have Devil's Tower is represented in the night sky as the constellation Gemini. And that's important. Okay. Well, these images that you've just seen, and I'm actually redrawing them at the moment in color, they came from Lakota tribal elders and are published in Ronald Goodman's Lakota Star Knowledge. And the Lakota elders share the stories of Waiona of Wankatanka, that is the holy breath of the Great Spirit or the Great Mystery. So these are not Bernie stories. These are Ronald Goodman's that he derived from the Lakota elders, and he chronicled in really an ethnographic book, and it's very well documented what he did. Okay. Well, at they traveled around. I said that they traveled around and they went to each place along the way. And the last place they went on their journey, which was they traveled along the ecliptic in the Black Hills. And so each one of those star patterns that we saw in each location was a different place that they stopped and they saw the stars rise. Well, the last place they watched the stars rise was Bear Butte, which we call Devil's Tower. And there they had the sun dance, which was also at the summer solstice. And this is Oscar Howe's depiction of the sun dance. My understanding is that it's always, well, before 1950, there was no sun dance. Okay. At least there wasn't publicly a sun dance. Now it's religiously the tribes are allowed to have it. But it's my understanding that no white person has ever been to a sun dance. And the sun dance this is a depiction from Oscar Howe looking from the ground up at the pole. And when if you cut the Sundance pole or branch off, it has a star shape on the inside. It's kind of cool. The cottonwood tree. And so we're looking at the sun and the dancers going around in this image. Okay. And the dancers, whether they're hanging from the cottonwood tree, or they're dancing around, they ultimately have to break through from the lines, break the lines to break free as they're dancing, and the lines are actually sewn into them. It's sinew. It's sewn into them. So this is it's to bring them to an ecstatic moment brought through pain. And in that static moment, they have a higher state of consciousness. So people believe, and I have no debate, that if you take shrooms or you take ayahuasca, you go into a higher state of consciousness. This is a completely different idea. This is an idea through high state of pain, your body chemically tries to save itself. And you go into a kind of a flotation type of thing. You hear this shamanic people around the world talk about this without the ayahuasca and without the psilocybin and other things. So this is an ecstatic moment to go into a higher state of consciousness, and it's chemically driven. But that higher state of consciousness gives you the feeling that you are one or communicating with the great mystery. Okay, we're going to go deeper back in time because Lakota Sioux is very important, and we've established that as above, so below, traveled around with the constellations around the geological features. It's a spiritual connection that is all one. We're to go deep in time, and we've gone deeper in time with a number of Paleolithic images in the previous presentations that people can go back and look at them. We've covered a lot of ground, a lot of time. In fact, we've covered from 12,000 to 34,000 years ago. And this part of the presentation, we're going to go back to 34,000 years ago to Monte El Castillo in northern Spain. And we're traveling there this fall, this September, and we're going to climb some of these mountains, although not this mountain, to see what we can see. And we've been here before to the gallery of discs, 10 meters across or roughly 30 feet. It's a big panel, okay? And on that panel, we saw the teacher and the apprentice, and the wide eyes of the apprentice listens to the teacher. And on sitting on the shoulder of the teacher is a fledgling golden eagle. This is a mid-June time period that we can determine by the characteristics of the juvenile eagle. He's got the down still on its flanks and so on. And but it kind of he sort of blends in with the teacher. It's almost like his black hair. So the first few months I recognized the teacher and apprentice. I thought he had black hair, but in fact he doesn't. He has a juvenile eagle sitting on his shoulder. Now we also have this masked cosmic man, and he holds up an egg in his right hand. The left hand is against the wall, and his left knee is raised, and he is male. Okay. And he has a mask on, a pretty cool mask. To the viewer's right side, you can see his eye deep in there. And on the left side, you can see a beak. A beak comes off his mask. So he transforms into an eagle. And you can see his chin down below. Cool images. We've seen these before, and we'll see them again. And then we go back to the teacher and the cosmic man. If you rotate your head, if you're looking at the teacher and you rotate your head to the left, everybody do that. You can see that the teacher and the cosmic man are the same character, so that the 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 fledgling eagle standing on the shoulder of the teacher becomes the beak on the side of the mask of the cosmic man. And so Vance, just like a quickie on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being like totally cool and 1 being not so interesting. Where do you rate it?
Oh, I'd say 8.
An 8.
8.
Most phenomenal artwork in mankind. You give it an 8. Okay.
Well, Vance is like, "Where's Hercules? I want to see him breaking things."
Yeah, well, you never
Yeah,
know.
where's his
You never.
Hercules?
Where's Hercules, right?
Where's the actual-
That's why I said 8, because when the final mystical reveal comes, then it'll get up to the 10.
Oh, okay. I got it. So we have the speckled mare, and jumping, leaping, sort of, and behind the speckled. By the speckled mare is Przalski's horse, because you don't have any of these horses run around your neighborhood. These are now like in like Kazakhstan or something. But it's kind of a donkey, not a mulish looking animal, and it has a raised mane, which is shown in the Paleolithic image. Okay. Well, our cosmic rider, the man, merges with the horse to become like a centaur. But it's not a centaur, because it is the merging of the two. The cosmic man has picked up the spirituality, the strength of the horse, in the same way as he picked up the strength of the eagle to transform into the avianoid. And he transforms in this image. We have another cosmic hero on his journey here, and he has the egg in his right hand, and the left hand is feathered behind his back. You can see the mask that he takes on and off. Pretty cool stuff.
It's like he's disco dancing too. He's like,
oh, totally, yeah. This is
having a party in the cave.
Absolutely. Okay. And actually, so yeah, he's so that image. We go to the next image, and we can actually compare that the left hand of the cosmic man against the wall is in fact the same left hand of this man on this journey.
Mhm.
It's the same hand. They are the same character. So the cosmic man he's left to go on his journey. And we see him, he puts on a mask, he has the same feathered left hand. They are the same character. Okay. And on this journey, he encounters the mother Iberian lynx. Iberian lynxes have a long ruff that's like the hair below their chin. Caracoles in Africa have they're like almost bald, and Eurasian lynxes have very short hair. So it's an Iberian lynx. We can tell. And then we have this crab character that comes out from under the ledge. Pretty cool stuff. And I've outlined it from the original, and everybody can see it. Well, it just so happens that crab from under the ledge looks a hell of a lot. Can I say hell? I guess.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
Because we're going there. We're going there.
We're all going there. Yeah,
we're all going there. Well, the crab on the Gyro disc in north of Spain looks a hell of a lot like pareidolia, or the features at the northern end of the Rock of Gibraltar.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. So Vance, have we reached a 9 yet?
Getting there, 8.5.
Okay. So we can close up. We can close in a little bit. We can see the arm and the claw, the right arm and claw of the crab, and a little close up there. And this is pareidolia. This was the Rock of Gibraltar is a natural geological feature. Okay, none of this was manipulated. Whereas the cave artists then found that giant crab coming out from the ledge, because this is like the top of that is like, I don't know, like 70, 80 feet or something. So it's a huge giant crab coming out from the ledge, and made a darn good story. Okay. And well, we can actually go to our mare, and remember the mare, the horse on the Gyro disc. We can find her as well. We find her in the pareidolia of the northern end of the Rock of Gibraltar, just above the crab. And that the artist found described that the mane is lifted, but it's actually two parallel lines at the top of the space. And so that's where he found the mane for the horse. And you can see my outline of that rock space to the viewer's far right. You can see the peak of the head, you can see the under muzzle. Now remember, this is pareidolia. This is not perfect art in the rocks, because this is all geologically formed. Okay.
Right.
And then the artist made a much better representation of it on the Gyro discs. Well, next to the down, on the panel on the gallery disc from the horse, we have this monk seal kind of lounging there. And they found the monk seal in that same space on the north end of the Rock of Gibraltar, in the pareidolia. And so we can see the hind flipper, and we can see how the head sort of comes up there. I'd say that on a scale of 1 to 10 at pareidolia, I'd give it like a 5. Whereas the crab is pretty good, and I would give it a 5. But it's there. They found it, and they observed it and they recognized it and they brought it back to paint it in the cave. Okay. And then we have the spinning nose bottlenose dolphin. We did this many moons ago on this program. It was a great experience. Well, we could find the spinning nose dolphin as pareidolia in the Rock of Gibraltar as well, and we can see the two high points are remember it's going south. This is because the one end of the panel, the viewer's right end is north and the viewer's left end is south. So it's going south. And we can see the high points are the lower fluke, the flipper of sorts, and the dorsal fin, high points in the Rock of Gibraltar. And we can see a flipper to the side, and we can see the beak and mouth in a kind of a ridge line. Pretty cool stuff. Now that image of the Rock of Gibraltar illustration was redrawn from a number of images, including these two. One's a photograph of the south end of the Rock of Gibraltar, and the other one was an illustration about 1900. And so we can, in my illustration or on my contracted illustration, I had someone help me with this. We took away all the man-made features, the man-made ports and things like that, and we got a pretty good sense of what's going on there. Now the red arrow points to something under the water that we can see. Vance, can you see what's under the water? The rock?
I can see something. It's roughly circular, but can't make out what
oblong.
it is.
Good stuff. Absolutely, that's okay. It's limestone. In fact, it's limestone outcrops that the whole Rock of Gibraltar is limestone. By the way, as is the Gallery of Discs. Interesting stuff. And so remember that now, 34,000 years ago, the water level was 30 meters shallower than it is right now. So what you see under the water there would have actually been above the surface, and that dolphin that you previously saw would have been flying in the air, and he would have been looking up at the crab. Okay. We have the Stereanthropus up on the panel as well. Kind of cool stuff. He met the hero on his journey who was holding the egg. He merges with the dolphin. Okay, and we have our red-haired man. I'm going to tell you, he's Orion. We did this before, so no big secrets. And then we have the oldest female effigy known at the moment, and she looks pregnant to me. She doesn't look so happy either. And you can see her hair is braided with the red discs. Well, that woman, the pregnant woman, looks a heck of a lot like Jebel Musa, which is on the south side of the Strait of Gibraltar. The differences are her chin and her nose, and I believe that chin actually fell off on the Jebel Musa. Now, Jebel Musa, Jebel means mountain, Musa means Moses. Okay, and in current regional mythology, Jebel Musa is either the biblical Moses or some other Muslim leader. Okay. But before, of course, Muhammad hasn't been around that long, and Moses hasn't been around that long either, relative to the 34,000 years ago. And so there was a narrative before that, and it was a pregnant woman. Okay, it is what it is. And this is not Bernie's great revelation on Jebel Musa. Everybody that's ever been there, that's Jebel Musa. That's the woman in the mountain. It is. So no more prizes
Bernie,
for me.
before we go on, as a refresher, because we're seeing all these images, for the audience that might not know, why do they have all these discs and different? What's the meaning?
Well, we'll
of
hit
these
that later.
characters?
Yeah, well, actually,
Oh, okay, you're gonna get to it.
we'll hit that later. Yeah. Well, for one thing is they actually go north to south, but we'll actually ask me that question when you see some. Give me about 10 minutes. We'll talk about that. Okay. So well, obviously they had red discs for her hair, right? To braid her hair, right?
Yeah.
And the eyes of the apprentice, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious to me. Well, we can the Pillars of Hercules, as we know from many sources, is Jebel Musa and the Rock of Gibraltar. And this is a picture from on the kind of the north end of the Rock of Gibraltar, looking south, and way off there you can see Jebel Musa. And so the Pillars of Hercules are the coat of arms of Spain. Okay. On the gallery of disc, we see this breaching humpback whale popping out of the water. Pretty cool stuff. Did this
Yeah.
before. And the journey in the belly of the whale, we see the prentice with the wide eyes in the sort of towards the belly area of the whale. Okay. And we can see this humpback whale again is pareidoia in the Rock of Gibraltar with the high points. The rostrum, the mouth, is at one end, and the dorsal tail at the other. And remember that subsurface feature we saw that was sort of oblong?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the fluke. It is the fluke, or it's kind of like tail of the humpback whale. Now, on the scale of pareidoia, I just gave that one a 10. I'm going to tell you, because that is just so cool that they captured that feature and made it into the fluke or tail of the whale. I think that's just like awesome. And so that's why the good Lord or the Great Mystery put it there. Okay. Now we can actually overlap these two characters, both the whale and the dolphin, on the Rock of Gibraltar, and we can see how they sit there. And so we could say that they are, one is the dolphin's going south and the whale is going north. Okay. It is what it is. And so they are in fact the same character as what or they're a duplicate. I should say they're a duplicate of a character. And we can actually, I said earlier that the apprentice travels in the belly of the whale. That's absolutely impossible from the travel in the belly of the whale. What he does do is that he travels in the ventral pleats of the whale. So you remember Pinocchio didn't actually go in the belly of the whale. It was in the area that the water's flowing in and out, right? That's the area inside the ventral pleats, not the belly of the whale, because that's you digest in the belly. So we can see this open area that is in fact the ventral pleats of the whale, which makes a lot more sense. Right, Vance? Makes sense?
Absolutely. And there's plenty of air to
Absolutely.
breathe too.
Plenty of air to breathe, exactly. So he travels. So Ice Age man knew that. You couldn't travel in the belly. You had to travel in the ventral pleats. So on the
Makes
panel
sense.
too, we see this. Remember the apprentice? Well, we've got him as pareidoia on the Rock of Gibraltar. And it's sort of like he's looking south, but it's in the towards the northern end. It's actually on the other side of the head of the seal. And we can see his left eye, nose, and chin, and wide eyes, and we see it from two different perspectives. Now, I've said this is all pareidoia. It is all pareidoia. I believe that this one was actually modified a little bit. It's just too close, just way too close to look like a boy. And if you look at the top of this image of the Rock of Gibraltar image, you can see, it's probably 200 feet. You drop off a rope somewhere, and you could knock off a few pieces of limestone fairly easily to give you the shape you're looking for. Did that happen 34,000 years ago? Did it happen 12,000? 6,000? I'm not sure. I think someone dressed this one up a little. It's just too close, and even it's too close. Even there's that cleft above the boy's head. So if we go down the panel, remember we had the cosmic man and the teacher with the eagle on his shoulder. Well, we find the reason why you can shift your head to left and right and see a different image is because it's two pareidoias on the panel. Okay, and it's tricky to kind of look at, move your head back and forth, but you can see the breast and the beak of the bird, and how if you flip that the opposite to the left, that would become the beak of the cosmic man. Okay. And you can see where the cosmic man's left eye would be. So it's, there's a lot of there's there's a lot of imagination that goes into this. But that's part of the beauty of pareidoia and this incredible image of having one after the other. And we kind of pull together our images on the gallery that we saw on the gallery disc on the Rock of Gibraltar, and we can see on this larger image where they all sit. And it's like absolutely freaking amazing. This is, well, the gallery of discs is, of course, is the oldest known map in the history of mankind at 34,000 years ago. But Vance, where do you stand on the oldest known map in the history of mankind at 34,000 years ago on a scale of 1 to 10?
The oldest map, though, that's amazing. That'd be an 11.
Yeah, that's 11, yeah, for sure. And this is a reproduction as this is a reproduction sort of the gallery of discs, and how the artist would have seen it at the Rock of Gibraltar. So that's what we're looking at here, because we're seeing a reproduction of the Rock of Gibraltar, or a topographic reproduction with all these animals as you would have seen it. And we can go back to the gallery of discs, and I've flipped it to the upright of sorts. And at the top of the panel, on the right, viewer's right, we see the terrestrial animals, and we see Jebel Musa on the bottom. And on the left side of the viewer's left, we see the marine animals as I mark them off. And so this is in fact a map. It's a map. It is what it is. Okay. And we've mapped Hercules. So the cosmic man is all these characters, except that for the woman, fit within the body of the character of the masked man that is Hercules. Okay. So Hercules in mythology had gone to the Rock of Gibraltar. We all know that. And he encountered the great crab called Cornicos. And the crab was grabbing at his foot, which we see happens in this image. And he kicks it off into the sky that became Cancer in a different part of the sky, and was ultimately replaced by Scorpius. Okay. Now, the Hercules is a common mythology, known mythology, everyday sort of stuff in Morocco. Okay. There's the cave of Hercules, where he rested before going off to the Garden of Hesperides, which is also in Morocco. Then the cave of Hercules is said to, when you look out from the inside, looks like the shape of Africa. And I don't know who fixed that up, but the Phoenicians and other had done a lot of mining in this. And this is a huge cave now that there's been like big rock concerts in there. It's the place to go. And so the Garden of Hesperides, I didn't know that or recognize that until like 4 or 5 months ago. And I saw online an archaeological journal in Morocco that was called the Garden of Hesperides. And then I looked it up. It's there. It's there. The whole story is there. The whole Hercules stories. We've talked about Hercules at the Rock of Gibraltar, and this is Hercules. This is it. Okay. So we've gone to the night sky, and so Hercules is the constellation Hercules, and the eagle is Aquila that stands on his shoulder and becomes the mast, and the horse is Pegasus. The dolphin and whale are the same constellation Pisces. The dolphin's going south, and the whale is going north, and the seal becomes Cetus. So Miguel had asked the question of what are the dots? Good question. Well, of course, it's the wide-eyed of the apprentice, and it's the braided hair of the woman. But what they are also is they're overlapping stars within the constellations, the north to south. So when he was traveling, he just wasn't looking at the constellations, but he knew where he was in time and space by each star as he moved from north to south. In the same way that the Lakota Sioux were doing it. Lakota Sioux were traveling on the Black Hills by the constellations along the ecliptic. And so every few days, they'd travel to a different place, and they'd see a different constellation as it rose. These cave artists were doing the exact same thing. Same concept, 34,000 years ago. So is there a connection between the Lakota and the uphill cave artists? Yes and no. Okay. The connection is that the tradition started at least 34,000 years ago, and that and over time it traveled around the world. That included the tradition, indigenous peoples in Siberia and North America, and Central and South America. So their astronomy was not carried across the ocean, but it traveled for tens of thousands of years across time and space. And they adopted different animals and places because they were in new places and there were different animals. Okay, so obviously Lakota couldn't have the seal, and they couldn't have the dolphin, they couldn't have the whale, because it wasn't in their time and space, and they of course couldn't have the Rock of Gibraltar because that's in Iberian Peninsula, and they're in Midwest, the United States. And so they adopted new stories, new characters, and new maps as people traveled along. But they had the concept going back from tens of thousands of years before. And people can argue back and forth about when did the Lakota reach the North America. A good earliest date that people have, like reliable date, is 22,000 years ago, that we can say that people came across and settled into the Americas. There's 120, 130,000. Yeah, whatever. But we can say that genetically we can trace people to at least 22,000 years, but more likely that the Lakota came in about 15 to 16,000 years ago, and that they were in Beringia for they actually hung out. They were hunter gatherers in Beringia, 20 something thousand years ago. So it is long enough time that people could have taken these traditions or carried these traditions that were part of them as they moved along and found new times and places, new animals, and geology to find their as above and so below. So it is not required for ancient Atlantean people 12,000 years ago to have sailing ships that gone around the world and spread the good news, because these traditions, astronomical traditions, had already existed. And that's why they're so similar to those in Europe, because that's where they came from. Okay. And next slide. And we can actually look at this again, connecting the earth and sky. We're comparing the constellations with the characters and with I've rotated the Rock of Gibraltar images, and it isn't, it's an as above, so below map. It is the essence of this. Okay. And you can travel around the world and you can find all kinds of temples that are the Axis Mundi. They are the place where it connects the cosmic point to between earth and sky. In fact, every church in the world becomes a new Axis Mundi, because it's where you connect to the greater Almighty, the great mystery. And every temple and throughout Asia is the same concept. And that's why they go back so far in time. Okay. Now, a little bit of test of time is our man we had before was Orion, the red-haired man. And what's kind of interesting is, well, today, Orion, you see, if you're in Chicago, for example, all the nice people there, and on a clear night, if you could see Orion, it could be like really high up in the sky, right? And
Yeah.
but 34,000 years ago, he was actually hit the highest point was just above the horizon. Okay, because of precession, how the globe spins around, and so the highest point he was just 34,000 years ago. Was just above the horizon. We can see relative to Sirius, but also he was kind of like level with horizon, right? You can see that. Whereas when you go out, in good old Chicago, if you go out to look at the night sky and you see Orion in the wintertime, he's going to be tilted, right? It was like the whole thing. But
Quite a
he
bit,
was
yeah.
actually, he was level to horizon 34,000 years ago, and he would have been seen just above the water. And just because he just was above the water, then it is possible that the man and the constellation could be lifted by the dolphin just above the surf. Because we do know that we recognize that the dolphin was in the Rock Gibraltar, and the dolphin itself was just above the surf. And the reason why the dolphin is jumping out of the water is it didn't have to jump very far, because it's in fact made of limestone. So the narrative kind of falls together, and we can go back to the all together now image, and I've been on the podcast now for about 5 or 6 years, right?
Right.
And I figured out most of these characters. Actually, I figured out some of the characters on that on the gallery disc back in 2015, I think it was about 2000, but it wasn't until 2017 they actually found all these characters that you've seen, and I didn't realize they were constellations until like mid 2017. So I went for a few years not knowing these are constellations. I was identifying the characters, and I recognized that those are these are Africa, and these are Iberian Peninsula, and these are marine animals. I didn't know they're constellations. So it's not like I was looking for constellations, and I recognized, and how I figured it out was that I found the horse, and I'd already found the bears, and I'd found the Ryan character, and then I just knew right away. Well, what else fits? I had a bunch of the characters at the time. Then I had Leo, I had the lion, Leo, which we didn't do. So I went back to look at my animals, and I just filled them right out. I had the sea monster, and I had Pisces as the dolphin as Pisces. Well, what the Greeks did was they did basically the same thing I did. They already had Ursa Major, and they already had Leo, and they already had Orion, and and always the source of the Greeks. Okay, and they filled in the places. But the problem with the Greeks is by the time they had received these animal constellations, they already had a bunch of them already, and those constellations came from other places. So they had to make the Cetus became the sea monster was a whale. Pisces they already had as two fish on a stringer, and they made the dolphin into Delphinus. Okay, so we go back to the Sundance and the Lakota soup. This is what I would say is that the hero did go. There was an original story of a hero on his journeys, as we see depicted all those places. But I believe that these people had the same tradition as the Lakota in that they traveled from place to place, and they had a ceremony along the way. Did they have a cottonwood tree? Probably not, because I don't think Iberian Peninsula has cottonwood trees. But did they have a group ceremony, and did they have lead dancers who were going on their own individual spiritual journeys? Absolutely. And I used to think that it was one person that had to kind of take this whole journey back and forth. But I don't think that anymore. I don't believe it anymore because it's just too dangerous. Um, because there's too many points on this journey, starting from the upper Pale, Cantabria on the north, you'd be losing your apprentices after they've spent years of being trained for this. So I think that there were groups of people that yearly went on this journey as part of the pilgrimage in the same way as the Lakota did in the Black Hills. And did they dance and did they sing and did they go through these extreme moments and did they have an ecstatic moment? Absolutely, they did. Did they take psilocybin muscles in that to find that ecstatic moment? Maybe, maybe not. Did they use intense pain? Sure, they could have. So the art itself had nothing to do with psilocybin. Art had nothing to do with the aesthetic moment. That was the experience that people had as they perhaps as they traveled through these places, in the as and above, so below. Okay, and so everybody out there in audio land, I've just picked up a screen that has me and all my links are out there, and this is the moment that the Moondog has some come to Jesus questions, perhaps from the chat.
Yeah, I
Set
haven't
up the
seen
tent.
questions in the chat. I haven't been following it very well either. But one question I have, is there any record of the Lakota having the parallel stories or any, lore that they have that would be in parallel with the myth of Hercules?
So the answer is that yes and no. And almost every indigenous people around the world have the same narrative of a hero that goes on a journey that is both across the terrestrial and the stellar space. Okay, so the answer is from archetypally, yes. The details of it, no. Except that they both traveled across the ecliptic, the parent path of the sun, and they're going from one place to another based on the constellations and the space around them. So from that perspective, people around the world do that. And the reason that people around the world can do that is because it goes so far back in time that I can knock it off at 34,000 years ago. That's a really long time ago. That's early migrations out of Europe. And also, even if it was people had left, I'm sorry, out early migrations out of Africa. And even if people had left Africa earlier, when West North African migrations happened, they would have then intersected and picked up this methodology. So that this is the story of all stories, and the stories is what we call Hercules, and it is a worldwide myth. It is the hero with 1,000 faces, and you can give him any name you want, but this is the original myth.
Well, it was the character in the Lakota that's parallel to Hercules. Were they strong or smart, and did they have an equivalent to the crab that grabbed Hercules? I mean,
So
are those
the
elements?
danger, of course, is the bear. Well, the bear chases the girls up
Ah,
the mountain. So there's trials and tribulations, and among Lakota, there's actually a circle around the Black Hills, and there was
oh,
a
and he
race
lifted the thing
between.
up, right? He lifted the mountain up, so that would be
He
strong,
made
right?
the mountain. It was actually the hero, which is Falling Star, who fell out of the stars. He lifts up the mountain to make the Devil's Tower, Bear Lodge. to save the girls, and the bear chases them, but he can't get up, so he claws to create the striations, I guess.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
all makes sense, right? I mean,
yeah.
Miguel, you get it, right, Miguel? I mean, this is so this is not
Yeah.
we're not making any of this stuff up. This is the real deal.
Yeah, cosmic man, the hero with a thousand faces, like you said.
Now the
He's
Hopi
the
have
hero.
the
Yeah.
star Kachina. Is that related to this starman that came and saved the girls? The Hopi
So
Indian.
it's actually called Fallen Star, and that is the Lakota hero. But there's lots of myths they actually have about or mistaken narratives around the Black Hills for all these characters. So this, of course, the seven sisters of Pleiades, and so there's myths associated with that. And there's a myth among the Lakota that there's a racetrack that runs around the circle of the Black Hills, and the feathered and the four-leggeds had a race to determine like the fate of the two-leggeds, which are us and bears and other two-leggeds. And so they have their own series of myths, just as the Greeks found in these upper hill images. They found lots of stories. Hercules goes on a huge journey, and other people who had gone back to the caves, they saw the images. They came up with their own narratives. Some people said, of course, the man becomes a centaur with the horse, and other people said he draws strength from that from the horse. So we came to a very interesting place in this image. We saw the Strait of Hercules, the famous Strait of Hercules by Plato. And what do we know about the Strait of Hercules from Plato?
Nothing
Advanced
anymore
question.
for my in my book. I can't.
Did
Hercules
anybody in the
sailed through.
chat? So Vance in the chat, is anybody putting out there? What about the Strait of Hercules? It is one of the most famous places in the world of Plato. Is anybody asking? Or giving an
no,
answer?
I know where you're going, but yeah, I think people are fascinated
Okay.
by Egypt and limestone on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Egypt. So absolutely, of course, the pyramids, the Giza pyramids were limestone capped, and I would
There
say
you
they
go.
would to replicate. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the Strait of Hercules. Okay. So we have now left the Lakota. So there's no connection between what we've talked about the Lakota and what we're going to talk about with the Strait of Hercules.
Got it.
And very important concept. So we've established that there's archetypal mythology, there's astronomical observances and abilities that were carried forth in deeper time. So we've left the Lakota, very important. Okay. Well, Plato actually talked a lot about Hercules. I'm sorry, the Pillars of Hercules.
Mhm.
And what we can see on this image is that the Pillars of Hercules are where the marine animals in the center of the panel, or the lower half center of the panel. And to the viewer's right, we have the Iberian Peninsula. We have the Barbary. We have the Iberian Links. And on the left side of the panel, we have Jebel Musa, which is Africa. Okay, that is in fact we have our north to south, and then there's lots of space above the panel. Okay, well then we see lots of stuff on the top of that panel. What could possibly be to the west of the Pillars of Hercules? Anybody in the chat? Anybody in the chat? West of the Pillars of Hercules. Actually, there's a delay in the chat, isn't it? Like 30 seconds.
Yeah, there is. There is a delay.
Okay, so it's like 30-second delay. So Vance, do you know of anything beyond to the west of the Pillars of Hercules?
We have an
Um,
answer.
Oh,
you go.
We have
Vance,
more answers.
you got to go like Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix, and you're missing the whole story. Okay. Well, Plato said that there was an island situated in front of the straits, which are by you called the Pillars of Hercules. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Okay. And Plato also said there was a great number of elephants in the land. Okay. Very interesting, right? So we have the oldest picture. We have the oldest image that we currently know of the straits of the Pillars of Hercules, and we have on the gallery of disc we can see what is in fact or not to the west of that. Okay. Now Plato also said it was devastated. This great land of Atlantis was devastated by earthquakes and floods. And if you look at the gallery of discs, you have all these animals overlapping each other, and it kind of looks like an earthquake and it looks like a flood. I live in Oregon, as I've mentioned many times, and there was like 25 years ago, we had a huge flood, like a major deal. And the cows were in the rivers and the fish were in the fields, and it looked just like this. If you drew a map, you'd say, well, this is where the fish are in the fields, and
Was
it was just like
Bigfoot safe? That's all that
well,
matters.
Bigfoot's in the mountains in the woods,
Oh, okay,
but
yeah,
would
yeah.
not have been affected by our earth because it was really in the valley, the Willamette Valley. So I've seen earthquakes, and I've actually never seen earthquakes, but I've seen floods. It looks just like this. Everything's overlapping and in the wrong places. And so Plato said there was earthquakes and floods, which looks just like this. Okay. Okay. Well, I believe that our teacher and apprentice, and deep in the subconscious of Vance, there is an answer to this. And Miguel already knows
I'm
the answer
waiting.
because he previewed the presentation. Okay. Make sure I wasn't doing anything crazy. And well, on the gallery of this, we actually have elephants. And they're African elephants because they have flat heads. And whereas Eurasian elephants have humped heads. And usually in North America, we mostly have your Asian elephants. You see the humped heads. Because Asian elephants are actually a lot calmer than African elephants. Now, Vance, how many elephants do you see?
Well, I see at least two there on this slide.
So if you turn your head, so as I have it, but if you is the trunk of one in fact the trunk of the other, and is the ear of one the ear of the other?
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because one is rotated from the other picture. Yeah, there's. Yeah.
So perhaps it's actually one elephant. It's just one has got his trunk up, he's alert, and the other one he's drinking. So the same
Yes.
concept that we saw with the cosmic man, uh, with the bird becomes the beak, and the bird on his shoulder, is that it's a matter of perspective. Okay. We also on the gallery disc we have a Barbary ape. The Barbary ape is indigenous to the Atlas Mountains of West North Africa. There are Barbary apes, and that image on the bottom is one from Rock of Gibraltar, but they're not indigenous. They have only been there for a few hundred years. People brought them
Mhm.
across. Okay. Okay. And on the gallery disc, we have this huge lion, and it is an Atlas lion. It is an African lion because it has the mane, and everybody knows the Atlas lion because it was the football team for Morocco that went pretty deep into the World Cup. They
Yeah.
were they were successful in their own way,
Yeah.
and we actually have two lions here. We have the female that's licking the male, and she's that block ship to the viewers left, and we see the red dots around the legs and paws of the male lion, because that's the blood. That's the blood of the Nemean lion that Hercules went into the cave to meet. He had the blood of his human remains. So that is that. So now Now we really know why the red discs are there. Okay. And then we have this crocodile. And we did this a few years ago. If everybody forget, or everybody wasn't here, this West African crocodile. It's huge. So the panel is 10 meters across. This covers almost the length of the panel plus half. So this is a 15-meter crocodile. It's huge, absolutely huge. Okay. We also have the mother bear and her cubs, and the bears are climbing a tree. So the mother is looking at the bears climbing a tree. And this is a bear thing. This is not like what you should be doing at home with your kids. Is that mother bears teach their kids to climb a tree for safety. And so whenever a mountain lion comes by, the mother bear does her thing, and she pushes the bears to the tree, and she either defends at the base or she climbs up, be protective. Well, at some point when the bears get too old and the mother bear senses they're getting too nosy, she does the exact same thing, except she runs off, and that begins the life of the young bears. So don't do that at home. It's a bear thing. It's a bear thing. It's just
Bare necessities, huh?
the bear necessity. So we can go back to our panel, the gallery disc, and we can ask ourselves: have we satisfied? You know, the earthquakes and the floods? Have we satisfied that it is there's elephants? At least we saw one elephant, and is it west of the Pillars of Hercules in that area at the top of the panel that we just talked about? So Vance, have we satisfied those criteria?
I think so. It's all there.
It's all
It's
there.
all
It's pretty
there.
good stuff there. It's all there, yeah.
And this
And
is like way before Plato, right? So Plato was reporting what used to be, and this is recorded in the cave artists by the cave artists.
exactly. So Plato said is situated in front of the straits, Pillars of Hercules, and lots of elephants. Okay, got that. Well, there were people, of course, scholars and people before Plato. And before Plato, there was Herodotus. And Herodotus wrote in his histories that the mountains of Atlas was called the pillars of heaven by the natives, the Atlantis. So lofty, moreover, that the top, it is said, cannot be seen, the clouds never quitting it either summer or winter. Okay.
Mm.
So Herodotus was before Plato and talked about the Atlantis people. Before, 800 years before Herodotus was Sanchinato, the Phoenician, who wrote, Atlas was the brother of Time, who had traveled to the western part of Africa, where he settled on a high mountain that supported the heavens so as to devote himself to the study of astronomy. We should have Miguel narrate these since she's like the professional narrator. But yeah,
Yes.
it is what it is. So high mountains, the Atlantis, and it was the thing. Okay, so at Mount Atlas is a place. We know it's actually in the high Atlas Mountains. It is the highest mountain in the highest mountains. It's now called Jebel Tobakal. And Jebel means, we learned earlier from Jebel Musa, Jebel means mountain. And we have the image of Atlas sort of holding up the sky from the Farnese Atlas. So there is a place called Mount Atlas, the highest Atlas Mountains, and it's called Jebel Tobakal. It's there. Now, we also have a story. We have a story. Before Hercules went to Jebel Tobakal, Mount Atlas, Perseus went. And Perseus went with the head of the Gorgon Medusa. And it was said that her gaze would turn anything to stone. So, of course, every image of Perseus, he has her holding the face away.
No.
And so Perseus had gone to Mount Atlas, and he had turned the Titan Atlas to stone. And presumably he turned everything else to stone. Would make sense, right, Vance?
Yeah, I suppose.
That's
Why
what
was
All
he
the
so
animals,
stupid?
everybody.
That was really why was he
exactly.
so stupid? Duh.
Exactly. So now we are going to take a second look at Jebel Tobakal, Mount Atlas, and compare it to the characters at the top half of the gallery of discs. And we can look at the top is the crocodile. Remember, this is pareidolia on the gallery of discs. I'm sorry, it's art on the gallery of discs that was found in pareidolia in the mountains. And we can see the crocodile at the top. And the middle, I have them outlined in the second two. And we can see can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we have the crocodile coming up here, and then we have over here we have the ear of the elephant, which is also down here, right? And the trunk comes along like this. And one of the climbing routes of Jebel Tobakal is you follow up the ear of the elephant. They don't call it the ear of the elephant, but in fact, that is a current climbing route. We're traveling to Jebel Tobakal in the September of 2024, and we are going to climb the mountain without oxygen.
What's the elevation?
Everybody asks that question. Yeah, you don't need oxygen, but it sounds good, right?
Yeah.
It's the same as Mount Hood, so it's about 3,000 meters.
Yeah, you're
And
good.
but technically, what we're going to do is we're going to climb the mountain next to it, the second highest mountain, Das, to see this view of Jebel Tobakal as Hercules would have seen it. Okay. And so we can see the other characters. We have this over here. We have the head of the female, the lioness, and we have the bear over here, the head of the bear, and we've got the kind of the head of the face of the lion, right? The face of the lion is here, right? Kind of. So it's pareidolia, and I'd say it's actually pretty good pareidolia. They found all these animals in the same thing. So this has nothing to do with the hand of man at Jebel Tobakal. It's completely impossible because it's a pretty high mountain. Okay. Well, there's actually an interesting one here in the gallery disc, and you can see that the ears come up, and you've got these teeth. And when I did this, I recognized this is not this carnivore canid, whatever the heck it is not anything in the real world. Never been, never will be. It's actually pareidolia that he picked up off of. You see the eye that they picked up off of the Jebel Tobakal. We can see the muzzle, and we can see the two legs come down. And we can see the hind comes back like this, and it looks a lot like Egyptian Anubis, which also has no representation. It's not a jackal, has no representation in the natural world. So I believe that this was the original Anubis, and it somehow it arrived at the Egyptians. I don't know how it got there, but remember that North Africa, over many thousands of years, was suitable for, wandering around. It had lakes, it had grassy fields, it had lots of animals to eat, and people traveled and they traded. I mean, it's not like the Great Sahara that it is today. Okay, and so we can actually go back to our night sky, and we can compare that. We did this 5-6 years ago, and the lion is, of course, uh, the the bears are Ursa Major, the lion is Leo, the the crocodile became Draco, and Aruga and Taurus together make the Aruga is the head of the elephant, and the trunk becomes Taurus. Now, doesn't Aruga and Taurus together look a lot like the head and trunk of an elephant, Miguel?
Hmm.
It does, yeah. And of
For
course,
sure.
we talked about Gemini. We can kind of put these together. So it is what it is. So the known source of Greek astronomical knowledge, because that's where we get these constellations from. We don't get them from other sources, these that are in our record. And in the Greek heritage, they had their own constellations, which we have in Hesiod and Homer in the 8th century BCE, and they also had a Babylonian tablets called Mo'alpin from about 1000 BCE, and we can see to the viewers right the image of Mo'alpin. Mo'alpin had a lot of constellations, some that we see today, and some that they got rid of. And then there's also Egypt, and no one ever talks about the Egypt one because they don't actually, they just say Egypt, but they don't say who in Egypt, which is actually pretty critical. So it was an Egyptian priest called Canopius of Memphis who was visited by Eudoxus. Eudoxus was a contemporary of Plato, and Plato and Eudoxus went to Egypt to meet with the priests and studied on it. And Eudoxus was there for a few years, and Eudoxus brought back the constellations. Most of these constellations that we're talking about today, these animistic constellations, came from Eudoxus because they weren't there in the time of Hesiod and Homer. They weren't on Mo'alpin. So the record sort of picks up and it brings in at the time of Eudoxus. Okay, time of Plato. And so we can travel the record from Canopius to Eudoxus to Aratus, Hipparchus, Eratosthenes, Hyginus to Claudius Ptolemy. And Claudius Ptolemy became that like an official record of all these constellations. Now, the constellations that Claudius Ptolemy left us are not in the same places that they are in our constellations today, because Claudius Ptolemy's constellations didn't have all these great lines and these, all these in this box are, Pisces or something. His constellations overlapped with each other because his record was of overlapping with each other. And that, the foot of one might be in the eye of one animal, might be in the eye of another, and that got sorted out by Western, modern astronomers, that we don't do things that way. And now, what Ptolemy also did, and people before his time, is they had to figure out, well, we already had Pisces, and now we got another Pisces, and we got a whale on top of it, so we need to sort that out and make the whale Cetus, and we make the dolphin Delphinus. So we have a historical record of all this stuff that we can travel through time and through space. Okay, and so we can go back to the Titan Atlas. He really didn't hold up the sky like that. Okay, and because the Atlas would sort of have to be like below the ridge line there somewhere, right? Because he's not. But where is Atlas? Well, Atlas is the mountain. Atlas is the face. The face of Atlas is the face of the mountain. Okay, and we can see the chin, and we can see the eye and the head, the forehead. So that Atlas holds up the sky in the sense that everything above him is in fact the constellations and the night sky. He becomes the effective horizon line as the contours of the face of the mountain. So Atlas is still there. We're gonna go next year. We're gonna rent some mules down at the bottom of the mountain, and
Cool.
we're gonna do it without oxygen, right? Okay. So did Plato tell the geographical truth? Question for Vance. Did Plato
Sounds
tell
like
the
it.
geographical truth?
Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
like it.
Well, sort of. It was a yes and a no. So Plato or Plato's source had seen something like the Gallery of Disc, or some representation. Maybe someone illustrated it, or they'd been there and they walked away, and it was beyond the Strait of Hercules, but it's not an island. It was Jebel Tobakal, which is in Morocco. So he told the geographical truth as he heard it. So Plato did not make up that story, because there's too many details that he could have made it up. So someone screwed up on the geography that Herodotus and Sanchinato knew the truth of, because they were just better geographers, and they had people that had been to these places. They knew people that had been to these places, whereas Plato heard stories. It was like playing telephone. And so Plato's geographical truth got screwed up a little, but he was right that there were elephants there. He was right. He was right to say that they were, it looked like an earthquake. It looked like a flood. Absolutely no question about it. Okay. So so
You're
Plato's
saying
proof is
Plato
a
didn't
half truth.
know about the continent of Africa? I mean,
So he didn't know that Atlantis or Atlantis was Jebel Tobakal, which was known before his time by Sanchinato, Herodotus, and others. So somebody in Plato's line of learning or teaching had seen an image, and he saw to the west of, obviously, the Strait of Gibraltar, Strait of Hercules. Obviously, to the west of that, there's a huge mass of land, as we saw with the previous image. He just didn't realize it was actually a separate image. That is in fact another image from Jebel Tobakal, Mount Atlas. It was confused to be a body of land, an island off the Strait of. So he had the right direction, sort of, but it's a split image, and they screwed up. I mean, it's an honest mistake. So
well,
where did the Ice Age? Sorry, go on.
then what does that say about his stories, of Atlantis then?
They
That says that.
existed. They exist. So they existed. They exist. Well, people existed. The Atlanteans existed at Mount Atlas, that is now Jebel Tobakal. These people now called Berbers, or they call themselves Amazigh people, in Morocco. They're all there, and so the rest of it. So that is like the origin. But then Plato brought in a lot of other narratives about Athena, which is really, it's Greek. It's not in politics, and that had nothing to do with the original story. Plato borrowed from an Ice Age narrative going back to at least 34,000 years ago, and then he, threw in, his own stuff, right? The story he wanted to tell about the fate of Greek civilization if they don't do what he wants them to do. But the original story goes back for a very long time, when we can show that it is, where the story got mixed up from the Gallery of Disc, that somebody thought that to the west of it, that huge mass of land was an island, but in fact it is Jebel Tobakal. It's a profile view of Jebel Tobakal, where we find the Titan Atlas, we find the elephants and other animals. I would say it was an honest mistake by a person who did not know the geography of the region. But Herodotus did know. Sanchinato, the Phoenician, knew. By the way, the Phoenicians, they said that Atlas was a Phoenician and that he discovered astronomy. So the Phoenicians kind of made up their own story too. They took credit for Ice Age artists 34,000 years ago that say they were Phoenicians, but they weren't. The Phoenicians are not the same people as the Berbers that they call themselves Amazigh. So Plato was like sort of right and a lot wrong, but I'm going to call it an honest mistake. So we can go around. Where did the Ice Age artists, myth makers, geographers, and astronomers go? Well, we know where they went, because 34,000 years ago was early enough in time that people traveled all around the world. And if they didn't intersect through West North Africa, they intersected with other people who had already traveled out, or people who traveled out later came across that path and explained them how the night sky works. And so that's why we can have these similar traditions all around the world. You didn't have to have Atlanteans, leaving a flooded civilization 12,000 years ago, because all these traditions had already left. They had traveled around the world from such an early point in time that it is what it is. And we only can recognize that because we have a map, we have the characters, we have the constellations from 34,000 years ago that covers the Iberian Peninsula, West North Africa, and the Rock of Gibraltar, which was the kind of the big addition in terms of the geography today.
Awesome. That was a really cool presentation. Yes, I don't know if I'm going to put this out in audio. It is so visual. I might just have to leave it up on different video channels. So, but of
Well, you put
course,
an audio. You put an audio to draw people who normally download it, or draw them to the video. Otherwise, they think you just like missed the night.
Yeah. Let me think about it.
Yeah.
Let me think about it, or I'll just send them over here. But yeah, really a wonderful presentation. I think we have a couple of super chats, Chester and Plutarchos.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you guys have questions, let me know. Anybody else, if you want to super chat a question, do it as low as $1 so we can pick it up. But first, before
Vance,
that, no, hold on. But first, I needed to do a little house cleaning. I wanted to show you guys a little video as Bernie was talking about my voice. I've been doing some voiceover, and I recently did a video game, and I wanted to share with you guys. The video game, the people are very cool, top of the line tech guys. I haven't played the game, but I did the voiceover. But here, the game is really cool. So I'm not actually getting paid to promote the game, but I wanted to promote my voiceover service. So it's a quick 1-minute video, and then let's get to some questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
So you gotta
journey to the Fiefers, a world of limitless possibilities. Start your adventure by choosing your new home from 6 unique biomes. Claim your hex, develop your strategy, and begin the construction of your base. Select from a range of building types to focus your base economy the way you see fit. Use the Fief token to upgrade your buildings and accelerate your growth while you amass your treasure and rise in power. But you need to be ready to defend yourself, for the Fiefverse can be a dangerous land. Craft defensive structures and train an army of defenders to repel raiding avatars who will come to take what is yours. Because the Fiefverse is growing full of avatars on the quest for loot, you must ensure that your defenses will hold. It's time to prepare. Welcome, newcomers, to the Fiefverse. All right, welcome to the Fiefverse. What do you guys think?
That's cool.
Looks interesting.
Awesome. Well, just showcasing if anybody needs voiceover. And sometimes with the videos that I do, if anybody also needs some videos, I've been doing a lot of videos for friends as sort of side jobs. If you need a video done, promo video, let me know. Those are fun to do. I actually enjoy them.
Well, if we can pull your video producer, your voice, and my images together, we get a pretty darn good program.
Yeah.
Game.
A game of Hercules. A game of Atlantis.
Crank up the bass a little bit next time, like make it more booming, That'd be really awesome. You wouldn't, right. You wouldn't normally do that, but on something like that,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Make it more Conan.
Yeah, but it was pretty Conan anyway. It was good.
Okay, Vance, 1 to 10. Where are we on the images and the concepts and the journey? Are you a man?
I think you reached to 10 because you connect to the dots, and that's what I always like, to get to the bottom of things and see where all the dots are connected. So you connected Plato and the Lakota and the cave artists and the Greeks and everybody who's in there, and the stars and all. It's almost like very Secret Sun-like, huh, Miguel?
Yeah.
Connections and so forth.
Yeah,
I like the connections.
Connected all the red discs.
I had an easier time seeing all the figures in the rocks this time around. I don't know, either I'm getting better at it because I have more practice, or you highlighted the figures in a way that made it easier to see for me.
Mhm. And
So
also, once you see it, you can never unsee it. So the things you saw before, they're there. So you added on a few to that.
yeah, I don't remember a lot of those things from before, but then again, my memory, things come and go, come and go. I'm getting to the point where it's hard for me to remember things that were 5 or 6 years ago, whatever, or, or even 5 weeks ago,
5 minutes ago.
5 minutes ago. What was that? What I just said? No,
Feet
it's
first. What was that? What were you talking about?
feet first. Feet five fo fum. I like the skeletons. Those are pretty cool.
Skeletons are
Vance, are you
always
going to
good.
join us on the Gibraltar ascent?
Probably I'll have to pass on it. Probably
Yeah,
have to
pass on.
pass.
So
I
you're
can't
going the
exist without oxygen up at 5,000 feet. Or
and you're going this September?
We're going to do Spain. We're going to actually climb mountains in late September of this year because there's we did that last time we did the mountains in Spain, right? Northern Spain. Okay. And so we're going to do that because what happened is after people stopped taking this journey back and forth to Africa, between Iberian Peninsula and Africa, they settled down in Northern Peninsula, Iberian Peninsula, and they had their own kind of Lakota Sioux-like journey in those mountains, as opposed to going to the big, to Africa. And so I've identified the mountains cave art that matches to those mountains. I think we did some of those like the last time around, and we talked about the archetypes. So that in itself is it. They had new journeys, just like the Lakota had in their time and place. So then we're gonna do Jebel in September of 2024.
Cool. That should be fun.
are those
Yeah,
caves
it's
easy to
amazing.
walk into, or are they? Does it require some spelunking and climbing up and under and over and squeezing through and so forth?
The ones we're going to will be guided, and you can walk down stairways. But I'm not that. I'm halfway excited to see the caves because I've been working with professional images, flood lighting that
Yeah,
you can't see that in a cave. Shine your flashlight in your closet and try to pick out your clothes.
yeah.
That's what
I can see that
that's what it's like when
exactly.
an individual goes in. Whereas I have these high resolution professionally taken images that I've been working with, that I can see details that you're never going to see in the shadows and all that sort of stuff. So I'm really interested in we're going to climb mountains and we're going to be visiting other landscape places to help me tie in the narrative and to identify this journey, the Northern Iberian journey, which would have been 12 to 28,000 years ago. And then what we've never talked about in this program, we'll have to do in another program, is I talked about people went into the Sahara, that brought this mythology, the Berbers to Amazon. But where else did they go? So where did they go 12,000 years ago? And if can any of these images be tied, or the specific iconography in these images be tied to other places 12,000 years ago? And the answer is that's another program. Come back in 6 years, right?
Yeah.
that that brings up another question, which is how did the cave artists manage to create all these things without the professional lighting and the floods and so forth? What were they lighting this with? How could they
Well,
see?
Phone
there was a movie
flashlight.
about it. There was a movie about it, and the movie's called Altamira. I recommend people watch it. And the star of the movie is called, of course, Antonio Banderas, right? He's the guy,
Of
and
course.
he becomes the amateur archaeologist who goes in, and there was no soot on the top of the Altamira cave, which is the one they found. It was an early
Yeah.
cave, about the late 1800s. They opened up Altamira, and so the archaeologist said, "Well, if there's no soot, this must have been a modern day forgery." So they brought in Picasso, and of course, in another movie, Picasso was played by Antonio Banderas. Okay. He's the guy, right? Okay. Yeah. So for these sort of roles, Picasso is brought in, and he walks away and he says, "None of us could have done anything like this." And what Picasso does is he actually lifts images from the cave art that he puts in his paintings that became the first cubism as modern art. But it's not modern art because he lifted the exact same images out of the caves, and people just didn't notice it or didn't want to talk about it. And one of those, of course, is the mass of women in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon in 1906, which became the rupture moment in modern day. Do we do Picasso on this program? We
I
never
don't think
did
so.
that.
I
Yeah,
don't think.
that's an important program. Because it's politically important. So Picasso says none of us can have done anything like this. This question still remained: how come there was no soot on the ceilings? And in the Altamira movie, um, they they find it by accident. And after the amateur archaeologist has been totally discredited by and it turns out if you burn the marrow from the bone, it doesn't create silt.
Oh wow.
And so what they had was they had these wooden trays that they melted the marrow, and they did their thing. And that's what it is. That's the punchline in the movie. And in the movie, the amateur archaeologist, I mean, it's a true story. He dies. And then of course, it was a French archaeologist who was so critical of him versus a Spanish archaeologist, right? Of course, it's French, and he comes in to apologize to the widow. Of course, she's younger because Spanish men married younger women, beautiful women, and she says, she's in tears, and he says, we found other caves of that same time period, which validated how old Altamira was. And the truth was, they had found caves, but he already disqualified their argument. Was no soot by they'll melt in the bone marrow because it doesn't have a high temperature. It doesn't create the soot.
There you go. When you go out there, bring some bones, get those bones lit up.
Yeah, the inside you got to.
Yeah. Well, we got modern technology, you got to.
Yeah. And all these caves that I've shown through these programs, they're all limestone. And limestone is about as hard as a fingernail. It's not that difficult to etch, but
Right.
what it is difficult to do is have these multiple layers of images. So that when the artist went into this, I'm going to go with he, okay? Just say he. The artist had the entire visualization whether in his head or in another place that he could project, because he couldn't make a mistake. If he made a mistake, the lion's brow would have been too short, right?
Hmm.
Or he would have lost the beak of the bottlenose dolphin. He had to have gotten it right. Therefore, he had some way that he knew it. And whether he's some artistic genius, as Picasso said, we couldn't have done this, or he had it on some sort of like storyboard into like on the flip side of a hide. That's a possibility too. But they clearly he had the image. It had to have been in one shot. It could not have been done in multiple turns because everything interlocks, everything interconnects, as it does in the pareidolia on the rock of Gibraltar and Jebel Tobakal and Jebel Musa.
Awesome. Well, that's been great. I guess we better wrap it up. Again, an amazing journey. A lot of dots and red discs connected,
Mm.
and a lot of interesting information. I'm sure the audience, especially by their comments, are definitely rewarded. Those will listen will be rewarded too. And you'll walk out of this cave, Plato's cave, Northern
Mm.
Spain cave, the wiser. So, Bernie, as always, it's really awesome for you to come and giving us your gnosis.
It's an absolute pleasure from my side, and maybe if it's 5 now, maybe someday we'll make it a 6.
A 6? Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm
So
not worried about I was gonna say, I thought Vance gave it a 10. Are we still now have
yeah,
we gone down to 6? No, no, of course,
fun
as long
fun having
as
me on.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, as long as this show's going, we always look forward to your archaeological insights. And Vance, glad you gave it a 10, and thanks for, keeping us company.
Sure. I thought it was fascinating. I say that a lot, but I mean it a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so much wonder out there. Learning is fun. Gnosis is fun. And for you in the chat room, thank you very much. Thank for those of you who gave us some support, some super chats, interesting conversation, interesting insights. And we will see you next week for another AB Live, a couple of very special ones. Stay tuned, stay alert, keep waking up. And as I always say, write your own gospel, live your own myth. Good night, everybody.
Good night.